I'm going to try to cover in this year, starting the year 5786. I know it says on the top of the page, Ani L'Daidi, but I'm not sure this year we'll have time for both of them, so I started with the second one, and we'll see where we go from there. That's number one. Number two, the other sheet that I gave you is just to make it a little bit more visual what we spoke about yesterday about mitzvahs. That the purpose of a mitzvah is to reveal Hashem's infinite light in this world. And how does that happen? So this is the sequence. The light of Hashem, which is infinite, which is called Or Ein Sof, because it's infinite, it naturally doesn't shine in our world. It's hidden in our world. But through mitzvahs, it does shine. We draw it down. And when we draw it down, it follows this order. First, it comes down in a more limited way, and it's broken up into the four names of Hashem, Yud Kei Vav Kei. Then from there, it gets broken down to 10, which are the 10 spheres. Then from there, it gets broken down. These 10 spheres branch out into becoming the 613 mitzvahs. And the 613 mitzvahs, when we absorb them, we draw down Hashem's light, this infinite light, through the mitzvahs into our body. And then from us, it also has an impact on the world around us, my environment, where I live, where I'm interacting, that it becomes, so if a person, for example, learns Torah, like in this room, it has an effect on me and my body, and it has an effect on the room. Yes, it has an effect on the whole block, has an effect on the whole neighborhood, has an effect on the whole world. But naturally, the further away, the impact and the effect is lighter or less, and the more immediate connection to me, that's more effective. I mentioned yesterday, just to explain one more thing, and that is that mitzvahs not only contain the godly light in it, but they draw the godly light into it. And we said it's like the organs of the body. So again, it's based on the premise that the way a person functions, I don't know what this means. Somebody think this. The way, oh, anyone here? Laura or those? Yeah, okay. I was on a JetBlue flight. It was the first time that they had these screens in front of each seat. And they announced that the big excitement, they have something new. And if you don't know what to do, just turn to the youngest child next to you and ask them. Okay. So it says that this is where we can see it in the human body as well. Like for example, again, based on the premise that according to Torah, everything it says in science about the eye is, of course, 100% accurate. The only difference is, so therefore they believe that the whole process of vision is purely technical and scientific. The eye, the different parts of the eye, everything works the way it works. And what the Torah says, and this is where it's explained in the Chassidus, that the power of vision really comes from the neshama. It's something which is more, which is not tangible, physical, it's part of the soul. And that power of vision is transmitted through the physical eye. So therefore, if chas v'shalom, something happens to the eyes as an obstruction, the person can't see, even though the power of the neshama is still there, but without the tools, it can't, like a person who's an artist, and not only an artist, will say they're the biggest artists in the world, but they have no brush or nothing to work with, they can't put anything down on paper. And a builder can't build without a hammer or without other tools. So the eyes, the ears, the nose, the mouth, the hands, the heart, the brain, these are all the tools through which the powers of the soul operate. So we see an interesting thing. that based on this, the person chas v'sholom has some sort of an accident, and there is an obstruction to the eye, and because of that, they can no longer see. So then, what happens? What happens to the power of vision? Where does it go? Normally, it's invested in the eye, but if the eye can't hold it, it's not a vessel for it because it's broken. Where does that power go? Well, then you have to see through your nose, but that doesn't happen. There is such a thing, right? That you're strong in other areas. But generally speaking, it goes back to its source, which is the soul itself. The soul is the one that manifests these different energies: power of vision, power of hearing, intellect, emotion. But if there's nothing to receive it, then it goes back to its source. So the person goes to a doctor and goes through surgery. They correct the damage. Whatever obstruction was there is now corrected. The person could see again. But the question is, all the doctor did was fix what we call the vessel, the keli. But what happens with the light that was sort of went back to its source? How do you get that back out of the source? He didn't do anything that dealt with the soul. Like imagine you have a cup of water and the cup breaks, so all the water leaks out. Now it's empty. And now you fix the cup. That's not enough. Now you have to find another way of bringing water into the cup. So if the physical eye was damaged and the power of vision left it, that's why the person can't see, and it went back to its source. How does we get it back? Oh, so this is here's where we see that the vessel, which is the eye or the ears or the mouth or any other organ in the body, not only contain the soul energy in it, but they draw it into itself like a magnet. And once the vessel is back intact, it draws out that power from the neshama. So the same thing with us. When we do a mitzvah, we're drawing down Or Ein Sof, the infinite light. And then this is where the infinite light goes to the 4 letters of Hashem's name. That's connected and manifests in 10 spheres. And that manifests in 613 mitzvahs. So here we are on page 47. For those of you who are listening, we're in the Mamar Derech Mitzvosheca, lessons in Derech Mitzvosheca, and we're doing the Mamar Viduy Teshuva. And we're on page 47. At the bottom of the page, we'll start from there. This is the reason why mitzvahs are called the organs of the king. King meaning Hashem. Because the 10 spheres of Hashem are comparable to a body. Page 48. The Gabi Ha'or HaMastabish B'Teichon, compared to the light of Hashem, this light of Ein Sof, this infinite light that's invested in them, which comes from Ein Sof, and how that accomplished, they are mitzvahs through the observance of mitzvah. And this is the deeper meaning of the words. You should be perfect with Hashem. So it's interesting, the simple meaning of that pasuk is, we just had this in Chitas, is that a person should be perfect. Doesn't mean to be perfect, it means to be complete, to be at peace with Hashem. It's talking about the commandment not to go to fortune tellers, not to go to people that'll tell you about the future, because the Yid should have trust in Hashem and be at peace with that. Whatever Hashem does is going to be good, and not to go to fortune tellers to tell them what the future is going to be. That's the simple pshat. The deeper pshat, according to Hasidus, according to the book, is Tama means to be complete, means that your observance of mitzvahs will to observe that in a complete way, and then you will be complete, being that each mitzvah is connected to a different part of the body, which is a part I didn't go into, that the body also, the structure of the body is also has 10 faculties and the 248 organs and the 365 veins, which means it's also structured in the number 613. And every mitzvah draws down a different aspect of Hashem's light, which in return penetrates and lights up a different aspect of my body. If I do all the mitzvahs, then I become complete. And if not, then that means that there's something missing in me. I'm going to be, it's like a person who doesn't eat certain foods that they need to eat, or they'll be deficient. Sometimes deficient in iron, sometimes deficient in vitamin D, vitamin C, depending on what you're not taking in. So all the mitzvahs make the person complete, and if I'm not doing a certain mitzvah, then something is not complete. I just want to throw this in. By the way, many people confuse this and ask the question: if you're not allowed to go to someone to find out the future, why do people go to a rebbe to ask? Should I go to this country? Should I take on this job? Should I marry this person? That means you're basically asking what's going to be the future. And because the Rebbe knows the future, he can guide me whether it's a good idea or not a good idea. When it says clearly in the Torah, don't seek to know the future. It's not part of the Maimon, but once I've mentioned it, I just want to explain it, that when a person goes to a tzaddik, they're not really asking about the future, even though you might know the future. What we're asking is, what is Hashem's will? Where does Hashem want me to be? Should I live in America or should I live in Australia? Should I be a teacher or should I go into business? Should I marry this person? Is this meant for me or not? So we're not saying, you know what's going to happen in the future, so therefore tell me what I should do now. No, we're asking, what does Hashem want me to do? What's my shlichus? What's my mission? And based on that, we follow that before.
That's a question.
I don't want to go too much off on a detour, yeah.
Okay, so the Urim is doing the same thing like a rabbi? That's one question. The other question is, what high level tuition? Like, I always go to friends with high level tuition, like just, like the same thing. So it's not a rabbi, but like.
What high level of tuition is, being that I don't have it, I don't know what it is.
Awesome.
It's not nevuah, because nevuah, as we learn in the Rambam, is only something which is given to a person who's on a very high spiritual level of a tzaddik. So if an ordinary person, ordinary I mean say not a tzaddik, just a regular person has this intuition, what it is exactly I don't know. It doesn't mean something negative, but it's not nevuah. And the Urim V'Tumim was Hashem's answer to Yidden what they should do. They used to ask the Urim V'Tumim, should we go to war, not go to war? Again, it wasn't tell us the future. It was tell us what you want us to do, Hashem. That's what it was. However, if a person sinned, which means he caused certain damage to his soul, the Bidul Mitzvah say either by not observing a positive commandment, or by transgressing a negative commandment. By doing that, he causes a blemish. There's some sort of a blemish and defect in the body, in the neshama. By not doing the mitzvah, he's not allowing that light flow that's supposed to come through this specific channel, that it should flow, because he didn't provide the channel. The channel is the mitzvah. He reduces the influence of vitality that's normally drawn down to the attribute and sphere associated with that mitzvah. So that's one thing that goes wrong. That he becomes deficient, the neshama becomes deficient in a certain spiritual area. But God, there's another thing. He draws down from this life flow that's in the neshama, and he draws it down this Teisvis Unika L'Imki HaKlippus. It causes a descent, and it adds nurture to the depth of Klippa. The Yesser says Amasha Niktiv Lem Adeh Kav much more than what was designated to them by the Kav Hamida. So again, I gave out this other book that I just want to draw your attention to, the workbook. So one of the things we have here, we have questions, which we'll do after we finish. But what I want to do as we go along is the definition of the terms. Remember I told you yesterday that one of the things we like to do in this class is make note of Hasidic terms, which is the vocabulary and the language. So if you see these terms anywhere else in a mimer, in a sicha, that opens the door that you'll be able to understand it. So the term in this booklet, in this workbook, it's page 103. And you know what, while we're at it, let's go over the ones we already did. We did 1, 2, and now we're up to 3 and 4. We actually did 6, and we did 7. Okay, let me go slowly. The first one, which reads Isusa de la Eila, you need a workbook? Isusa de la, and again, these are yours, you can write in it. Isusa de la Eila, Isusa de la Tata. Isusa de la Tata, the first one, means an arousal from below, which means something we do to cause some sort of an effect on the spiritual realm. Isusa de la Eila means there's something happening in the spiritual realm that causes a change in me, an arousal from above. This is the acronym. Why I didn't write out the full word, I don't know. But you'll see it here in the mimer. Number 2 is the quote, which is quoted very often in Chassidus. By the way, I'm not putting in just Kabbalistic words. I'm putting in words and terms that are very common in Sichos and Maimarim. So when you see it, you'll be able to understand it.
Yeah, you have it later.
What?
It's not the first page. One is like on the end. But the or the back. The back.
The reason, 1,
Right. It's page 3. If you open it the English way.
in the bottom, you have a number 103.
There's 1. 103.
This used to be part of a bigger booklet. That's why it says 103. You don't see it?
1. Yeah, we don't have a.
The last page. What does it
There's
say?
1, 2, 1.
Oh, look over here in the middle of the page on the bottom. Does it say 105?
There's 1.
Really?
There's 3, 1. Yes.
Maybe you have a different mimer.
Yeah, we have different.
So maybe you don't have this one. You have something else.
Yeah.
That's this on top. Really, it should. Okay.
Okay.
But there is a list of things which are vocabulary list, right? It says on top Hasidic terms and phrases.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's do it that way. Forget about the page number. Right, so that's number 1 in the Hasidic terms and phrases. The second term and phrase is the one we had yesterday. Lav mikol inen midas klal. Hashem is not defined by these midos, by these attributes. In other words, even though we always talk about the 10 attributes, but that's not chas v'shalom what defines Hashem himself. Hashem is infinite. Hashem has no form. There's no way of defining him, not in a physical way, not in a spiritual way. He's just abstract, infinite. The 10 spheres means Hashem manifests his infinite light in 10 different ways. Now, the next one is what we're talking about now. The words are Tosfos Yanika, which means an additional nurturing. Tosfos means additional, and Yanika means nurturing. So in order to understand this fully, look at, after that, right, look at number 8, Yanika Sachitzenu, which means the nurturing of the external forces. To say this in simple words, Klippa, where do they get their sustenance from? Klippa means it's not godly, it's the opposite of Hashem. It opposes godliness. So where does it get the light from? But from where's the source of its light? Ultimately, it has to be from Hashem himself. It's from the back. Right, that's what it means. That's why they call it chitzonim, external. So Klippa gets its energy from Hashem, but that energy it comes from a very external place, from Hashem's back, so to speak, and the energy is very contracted and hidden, and therefore they get minimal energy, And that's why they are klipa, they're so dark. And Hashem himself does that. He wants them to be there. He wants there to be free choice. So when I do an Avera, and by doing the Avera, it's nurturing klipa, what am I doing wrong? Hashem wants them to be around. He's the one who created them. So the answer is, no, Hashem created them and gave them minimal energy. What I'm doing is I'm giving them additional energy, which is making them stronger, and that's upsetting the balance in the world. I mean, to think of an example in the world we're living today, if somebody would leak information from one country to another country, like it's been happening all over, with what do they call it? Online, things leak out. That's endangering the country. There's a certain amount of information that's known, and a certain amount of information that's not given over to outside, because that would undermine the security of the country. If a person would give ammunition to someone who's an enemy of a country, then by doing that, you're endangering the country. You give them food, yes, that's fine. You give them clothing, you give them shelter, but to give them weapons, that's endangering the country. So there's a certain limit of how much you can give. When I do an Avera, I'm giving additional sustenance to Klipa. He doesn't say this here, but in another place, he gives a mushal, like imagine if a person cuts their finger. So there's two things that have wrong. Number one, they cut the finger and they're losing blood. Number two, this could lead to an infection and bacteria and germs, which could do harm to the body. So in a sense, when a person does an Avera, they cause damage to the neshama, and they're also causing that the vitality, which is meant to be in a holy place, leaks out, and that vitality goes to klipa, which is giving them more strength than they're supposed to have. So that's what these words mean. So I guess number 8, the definition would be the nurturing of klipa, and number 3 is the additional nurture.
What? Additional?
Nurture. Unika means the nurturing, what they nurture from Kedusha. Now, number 4 is also the word that you had in the Mamar, Kav Hamida. How do they translate it in English? I don't know if that's going to help as much. Just say the Kav that measures. So basically in Kabbalah, it says, everything is described in physical terms. So it says that after Hashem contracted his infinite light, he allowed a line of light, a very limited line of light to shine in the world. So what does that line represent? It's called Kav Hamida, the line that measures. In other words, it's using the analogy as if this would be a measuring stick, and this would be a stick with which you measure how, when you're building something, you're measuring how big this should be, how small that should be. So it means the light of Hashem that measures how much sustenance everyone and everything in the world should get. So Hashem gives life to the sun, gives life to the moon, gives life to people, to the animals, to birds, to fish, to insects, to men, to women, to children, and everyone has to get a different kind of energy for them to live properly, some more, some less. So too, Hashem gives a certain limited amount of energy to Klipa and gives more energy to Kedusha. And that limited amount of energy, that's what they're meant to have. And what I'm doing is, when I do an Avera, I'm adding more energy than they're meant to get. That's what it means. So if you look at the words inside again, let's go back down to the bottom of page 48. The Gav, the second thing is, Mamshif Machaya Shabbataychan. He draws down from the vitality, which is holy vitality that's in me, and that's giving Taisvis Yanika, additional nurture, the Imkia Klipas, to the depth of the Klipa. And what does it mean additional? The Yesus Ace, more Amashanikta than what was designated through this Kavamida, through this measuring rod, so to speak, that Hashem measured and designated that Klipa should get a limited amount of chayes. And where do they get it from? The P'chinas Acharayim, from the back of Hashem, is Acharayim D'Acharayim Bilvad. And so they're supposed to get light flow only from Hashem's back and from the external aspects of godliness. But when I do an Avera, and it's like my blood is leaking out, is that would be similar to Mamshech Lem Pnimis Hashefa Amalubish Bekelim the spheres. That means this inner light of Hashem, which is in Hashem's name, and it's part of the 10 spheres. And that's drawn down to me to give me life, to give my Nefesh Elokis life. But when I do an Aveira, it's like I'm taking that life flow and allowing it to leak out to the Nefesh HaBahamis, to Klippa, which is the opposite of Kedusha. This would be like treason, for example. Someone who belongs to a certain army and they're taking information, or they're taking weapons, or taking other assets that belong to this army to strengthen this army, and they give it away to the enemy. And that's what I'm doing when I do an Aveira. This is explained at length in the Geras HaTshuva chapter 7. This is the deeper meaning of the words in Shir Hashirim, a king bound in tresses. I don't know what it means literally. Tresses is what it means, hair, long hair or something. Yeah, how we do that? Long hair, I think that's how they translate it. So in the other book where you have the references, this is not it, right? This is the other one. Let's go over the references. You have one? Yeah, yeah. So take a look at page. Thank you. Page 66, that's the source. The Shir Hashirim. Your king is bound in Nazaritic tresses. Nazaritic probably means a nazir. There's a concept of Torah of a person's a nazir that lets his hair grow long. And that's what it means. So of course there's the literal translation, but the translation according to Kabbalah is that Hashem is as if bound in ropes. In other words, I'm taking Hashem, not Hashem himself, but his light and his energy, and I'm taking it like a person, you tie him up and you take him away from his place to your place. I'm taking that energy like that, I'm tying it up, and I'm transmitting it to a place which is impurity. Okay, to continue, page 50. The Englach Ilba in Godwin is that there's no greater disgrace than this. In other words, to take Hashem, so to speak, and force him, tie him up and force him and give him away to the enemy, what could be more disgraceful and humiliating than that? So in a sense, when a person does not Avera, that's in a sense what's happening. Brought down, when the person does not Avera, Hashem is called a disgraceful king. And I'm the one that's causing that disgracefulness. And this is the mystical secret that's implied when it says, if I defected or I blemished the letter K. So this is something in the Siddur, but I made a copy here so you could see what we're talking about. Look at page 68. In fact, I discovered that some of the girls say this when they really shouldn't be. We're talking about this page 68, where it says, if I neglected to put on tefillin, if I neglected to say the Shema, or neglected to wear my tzitzit, these things do not apply to women. You don't have to say. But what does it say? If you look at the words, let's look at English. Made will your will, Hashem. If I erred and sinned willfully and transgressed with you and caused a defect in the letter Yud. By what? By neglecting to read the Shema. The next paragraph says the same thing. If I cause a defect in the letter Hey, by neglecting Tefillin. The next one says if I cause a defect in the letter of Vav by neglecting tzitzis. And the last one is if I cause a defect in your name by neglecting prayer, davening.
Prayer?
Yeah. So basically they're all, of course, there are 4 things here, but obviously these 4 must be mentioned for the more general mitzvahs. That means that everything that a person does, they're causing a defect in one of Hashem's name. Because that life flow from Hashem is supposed to flow to Kedusha, but I'm taking that life energy and causing it to flow to the wrong direction. As it says in another pasuk, this is page 67, the Neked Shem Havaya. The simple meaning of those words in the Chumash, that's 1 page before, Neked Shem Havaya, in the Chumash. Literally, it means, look what it says in the English translation. Whoever pronounces clearly the name of Hashem blasphemes the name of Hashem. It means God says the opposite of a blessing in reference to Hashem. That's the simple meaning. The word nekev in Hebrew also comes from the word nekev, which means a hole. What does it mean? It makes a hole in the name of Hashem. So using the analogy we gave before, it's as if chas v'sholem, the person made a hole in the vessels of the 10 spirits, and that allows that the light that's in the holy vessel should leak out and flow to the wrong place. Can make of aver, the analogy we just mentioned, like a person who got with pierces or punctures an organ in the body and causes the blood to flow. The seconds there, page 51, in order to correct this. In other words, this goes back to what we said yesterday, that when a person does tshuva, of course, tshuva means Hashem, please forgive me, and we want to bring back that relationship with Hashem the way it was before I did something wrong. But besides that, how do I correct the damage that I did? If I cause damage, then I also want to correct the damage, which is what we just described. The B'dei seconds there, in order to correct this, Hashem is Baruch B'rei Rachamo, Hashem, in His great compassion, gave us a mitzvah called tshuva. Tshuva not only brings that Hashem forgives me, but maybe refuah la'olam. There's a quote in Gemara that tshuva brings healing to the world, which means shemashlemes abgomim and iskarim la'el. That the tshuva does something incredible. It actually corrects the damage. It's like a doctor would come along and do something that whatever was cut in the body, whatever was pierced, whatever was damaged should be healed, and now it's back to normal. So number one, the energy is back within me and it's not flowing outwards. So all the damage that was done in the past is correct. But now that he explained that there were 2 aspects in the damage, number one, that I caused, that I'm lacking, that I am deficient in a certain, something godly is missing in me because I didn't draw it down. And the second thing is that I caused chayas to klipa. I caused that klipa should get extra life energy that they normally don't have. So therefore, we must say that the healing process is also in both areas. Number one, whatever was defected, whatever was damaged gets fixed, gets repaired and healed. And number two, whatever I cause to flow to the klippas gets also removed. 2 dimensions of correcting the deficiency described above. Aleph, one of them is the malis hapgamim v'chisreinis, to heal the blemishes and the deficiencies which are brought about the miyat amshachas oren sabarchu, by the fact that Hashem's infinite light was neglected to be drawn down, and so it's lacking, and therefore I'm deficient spiritually, and that has to be healed. And the second thing is lahaber unique zechitzeri. That also has to heal and remove the nurture that was given to them. Again, using the analogy we said before, imagine I gave the enemy weapons to go and take it back, and they no longer have it. However, now let's focus on the second thing, about giving extra strength to klipa. This in itself, and based on there's two parts to that. One is now that I've corrected the damage, they will no longer be able to nurture from kedusha because the wound was healed. So that part of the body is no longer open, no longer blood flowing, so therefore they can't get anything. But the question is, what do I do about what they already got? And by the way, I gave a mushal. I just said, imagine you gave them weapons and you take it back. Okay, that's weapons. What if I gave them information? How do you take that back? There's certain things you can't take back. Once they know the information, where this is or where that is, or how much ammunition you have, how many tanks you have, how many planes you have, what kind of things you have, that which is very vital information for the enemy, I can't take that back. They already have it. So in Kedusha, also the question is, how can I take back the chayes that they already have? Today he's going to explain what exactly happens when a person does an Avera and how we're able to reverse that. Yes, we are able to reverse it. He's going to explain how. Okay. And how far we'll get, let's you start. The Hine. Beis Chalukas Rishonis. The first two things that we spoke about, which means to see to it that the damage is healed and no longer is there the two things. Number one, that whatever damage was done is healed. And the second thing is that there's no longer any vitality that flows from me, from Kedusha to Klipa. These two things are the Amshachas Eresav Mamayla B'Pinas Makir. By drawing down the light of Hashem, which is a higher light, an infinite light, and that's accomplished through tshuva. Why? So there's a term that's brought down. The source of it, I'm pretty sure, is in Zohar. Let me see if they write the source. 18. No, it's probably somewhere there where it says, page 52, Hamakif Misame Einim Chetzonim. The encompassing light blinds the eyes of the external forces. In other words, the only thing that external forces could really gain from is a light that's limited, a light that's contracted. There's a higher light, this light which we referred to before as Ein Sof, that's called Makif. That's a light which is called an encompassing light. When that light shines, it's so bright that it's blinding that Klippa cannot exist in the presence of that light. So therefore, when a person does tshuva, they draw down that light from Or Ein Sof. And when that's drawn down, that gets rid of the Klippa that was created, that they can no longer receive. And what about the damage that was done? The gam, mimale kolab gam. There's another thing, this light. It repairs all the blemishes. Of course, we need more explanation. And a little bit later in the Maimon, he'll give a mushal, but I'll just mention it now. Gives a mushal. And the mushal is that if there's a river or a well that dries up, no more water, what do? You dig deeper, and there's no doubt if you dig deeper enough, there'll be new water that'll rise and fill up the well or fill up the river. Because there's always water down there, but you have to dig deeper to get to that source. Same thing here, that the light that came to us from Hashem's four-letter name, that was dried up because I didn't do this mitzvah or that mitzvah. But if I go deeper into this light, which is the infinite light, that will fill up all the holes, so to speak, all the areas that were deficient, and it'll be made up.
What about the information that leaked out to the other side, like?
That's the next piece. We didn't get to that yet.
Okay.
And the reason is ki ui shlimu de kula. This light of Hashem is complete. The kula kamei kalatipa makiyanis. Everything in the world is like a drop of the ocean. The whole creation is just hoydei aler the shemaim is just it's not Hashem's essence, just his glory, meaning to say, is just a light, and that's insignificant to Hashem himself. So being that this is such a powerful, infinite light, it could fill up all the gaps and fill up everything that was missing, like that dried up river. And it's no, not only does Hashem forgive him, but also the damage that was done is now healed. And how is it? It's mainly through tshuva. So in other words, tshuva is a very powerful, even though it's a mitzvah, like all mitzvahs, but it's a very powerful mitzvah. It has the power to draw down from a place which is higher than all four letters of Hashem's name. And when that higher, deeper light shines, everything gets filled up, and there's nothing else happening. Okay, to be continued.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Even in Teshuva, people didn't know, like, let's say, like, talk about Teshuva, they didn't know better. So, like, it's not like they did something wrong technically on purpose. Any idea?
Right, yeah. Well, that's altogether different because that's not even considered doing something by mistake. That's
It's not in Klipa, it's not Klipa?
no, it's klipa, but the person didn't even know that this is an avera. There's no knowledge whatsoever. Okay. To be continued.